We live in a world that celebrates productivity, service, and selflessness. We admire those who give relentlessly, who put others before themselves, who seem to always be there when someone needs them. These people become our role models, our examples of what it means to be strong, to be good, to be valuable. But there's a truth we often ignore. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give what you do not have. And yet so many of us are trying to do just that. It's subtle the way it begins. You say yes to something small, even though you feel tired. You put off rest because someone else needs you. You tell yourself it's just for now, that your own needs can wait. But then, just for now becomes the norm. Over time, your calendar fills up with commitments. Your mind gets noisier, your body more exhausted, your emotions more fragile. And all the while, you tell yourself, I'm doing this for others. I'm doing this because it matters. I'm doing this because I should. And there it is, the should. One of the most dangerous words in our internal vocabulary. It doesn't ask whether you're ready. It doesn't care if you're capable. It only demands, it places obligation over authenticity. And what begins as noble sacrifice quietly turns into self-neglect. You start giving out of depletion, not abundance. You offer support while silently needing it. You become a helper who has forgotten how to help themselves. We've all seen what this looks like. The teacher who gives her students everything but hasn't taken a breath in weeks. The manager who leads a team with energy and focus but hasn't slept well in months. The parent who sacrifices for their children every single day but no longer recognizes the person in the mirror. They're still showing up, but barely. They're still smiling, but it's thinner now. They're still giving, but the well is running dry. So the world has convinced us that self-care is selfish, that rest is weakness, that saying no means you're not committed. But what if we've got it all backwards? What if the most generous thing you can do for others is to take care of yourself first? What if your impact doesn't come from how much you give, but from the quality of what you give? What if showing up at 100% once is more meaningful than showing up at 40% every day? You can't give someone your full attention when your mind is cluttered. You can't inspire others when you feel lost yourself. You can't support someone else's growth when your own foundation is cracking. We don't need more people trying to do everything. We need more people who know themselves deeply, who protect their energy, who lead from a place of wholeness, not obligation. And here's the thing, fixing yourself isn't about being perfect. It's not about never struggling or never failing. It's about being honest with yourself. It's about pausing long enough to ask, how am I really? What do I need? Where am I hurting? What have I been avoiding, and what parts of me have I been too busy to care for? Those are hard questions. They require vulnerability. They require courage. And they require time, something we've been taught to spend only on others. But imagine this. What if you dedicated the same level of care, attention, and consistency to yourself that you give to your work, your family, your friends? What might change? When you take time to repair the small fractures within you, you become more grounded. When you give yourself permission to rest, you show up more present. When you learn to meet your own needs, you stop expecting others to do it for you, and that changes your relationships. It's no longer about demanding or needing, it becomes about sharing and supporting. People can feel the difference. When you're whole, your energy becomes something others want to be around. When you're at peace, you give without expectation. When you're centered, your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. This isn't a theory. It's something we all recognize instinctively. We're drawn to people who are settled in themselves, who radiate calm, who listen deeply because they're not constantly drowning in internal noise. But reaching that place takes intention. It takes discipline. You have to choose to put yourself first, not out of ego, but out of responsibility. You have to be willing to say, I need a moment, even when others are calling for your attention. You have to know your limits, respect your boundaries, and trust that the world won't fall apart while you take care of yourself. Because it won't. In fact, it may get better. When you begin to prioritize your own healing, your own growth, your own well-being, you give others permission to do the same. You model what it looks like to lead with integrity. You teach those around you that exhaustion is not a badge of honor and that burnout is not the price of success. You show that true strength is not how much you carry, but how wisely you carry it. So let the cup fill. Let it overflow. Let your service come from a place of abundance, not guilt. Fix yourself first. Not because you're broken, but because you're worth the care. Everything else can wait, and everything else will be better for it. Clarity inside creates clarity outside. It sounds simple, even obvious, but most people don't live this way. Most of us try to make decisions, build relationships, and lead others while still carrying a storm inside. We respond to life in the middle of confusion and wonder why things feel uncertain, scattered, or off course. But here's a truth many never stop to consider. When your internal world is in chaos, your external world will reflect it. If you don't know what matters to you, if you haven't spent the time to define your values, understand your purpose, or get clear on what you will and will not stand for, then every choice you make is a gamble. You're reacting, not creating. You're drifting, not steering. There's a difference between motion and direction. Many people are in motion, working hard, staying busy, always moving. But that doesn't mean they're going anywhere meaningful. Motion without clarity is just noise. You might achieve something, but you won't know if it's the right thing. You might meet expectations, but not feel fulfilled. You might chase goals only to feel empty when you reach them, because without clarity, even success can feel like failure. We often look outside ourselves for guidance. We ask others what they think we should do. We compare our lives to those around us. We look to trends, to metrics, to outside validation to decide whether we're on the right path. But the truth is, none of that works if you haven't first looked within. Until you understand your own why, the how and the what are unstable. They shift with pressure, they bend under opinion, they collapse under uncertainty. But something changes when you start doing the inner work. When you get clear on who you are, what you believe, what you value, everything else starts to align. Decisions become easier. Not because life is suddenly simple, but because you've removed a layer of internal conflict. You stop second-guessing yourself so much. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop trying to live a story someone else wrote. And that kind of clarity is magnetic. People can feel it. They may not know how to describe it, but they're drawn to it because most people are still trying to find that clarity for themselves. So when they encounter someone who has it, even a little, they're inspired, they feel safer, they trust you more, they listen more closely. That's what true leadership is, not control, not charisma, but clarity. Clarity creates trust, trust creates influence, influence creates impact. The opposite is also true. If you're unclear in your direction, if you say one thing but act another, people notice. They might not call it out, but they feel it. Misalignment is uncomfortable. It creates tension. It causes others to question your intentions, even when you mean well. Without clarity, your message gets diluted. Your presence gets inconsistent. Your leadership loses weight. You might be speaking loudly, but no one is listening deeply. We've all met someone who is incredibly intelligent, talented, or driven, but they seem scattered. Their energy is fractured, their commitments are all over the place. It's not that they lack potential, it's that they lack alignment. They haven't stopped to figure out what they actually want to build, so they build everything. And slowly, they burn out, or worse, they succeed at the wrong thing. The people who create meaningful, lasting impact don't do more, they do what matters most. They don't chase every opportunity, they pursue the right ones. And that starts with clarity on the inside. Because when you know who you are, you stop needing to prove it to everyone else. You act with conviction. You move with purpose. You're able to say no, not out of fear or hesitation, but out of confidence. Because you know that every no protects a bigger yes. Clarity doesn't come overnight. It's not found in a single journal entry or epiphany moment. It's built over time, through reflection, through honesty, through practice. It's choosing to stop numbing yourself with distraction and start paying attention to what your life is trying to tell you. It's listening to your own discomfort, not running from it. It's asking better questions, not what do they want from me, but what do I want for myself? Not how can I keep up, But what am I really here to do? The answers won't always come quickly. But every time you choose to sit with yourself instead of rushing past your emotions, you grow more grounded. Every time you set a boundary that protects your peace, you affirm your worth. Every time you pause before reacting and ask, does this align with who I am? You sharpen your clarity. And that clarity becomes your compass. Eventually it starts to show. Your communication improves. Your relationships deepen. You start working with life, not against it. You begin to trust your own voice. That's when leadership stops being a performance and starts becoming a natural extension of your character. People follow that, not because you told them to, but because they believe in where you're going, because you've shown them you believe in it too. It's easy to think clarity is a luxury, that it's something you work on after the urgent things are handled, but in truth, clarity is the work. It's the starting point. And without it, you're building on sand. With it, you build with intention. You build what lasts. So the next time life feels chaotic, the next time you're unsure where to go next or what decision to make, don't start by looking out. Start by looking in. Ask yourself, what do I really stand for? What do I truly want to create? Who am I becoming in this moment? The answers won't just guide your next move. They'll shape your legacy. We often hear the word fix and think of something broken, something not working, something flawed. So when we hear the phrase fix yourself, we might feel defensive, we might feel inadequate, we might even feel shame. But what if fixing wasn't about perfection? What if it wasn't about correcting what's wrong, but about becoming more present with what's real? Most people walk around unaware of how much of themselves they've hidden. They've covered their pain with performance, their questions with distractions, their insecurities with productivity. They've become masters of getting things done while quietly avoiding the deeper work of self-awareness. But sooner or later, the truth catches up. The cracks in the surface begin to show. Not because we've failed, but because we've neglected to pay attention. Fixing yourself doesn't mean becoming flawless. It doesn't mean putting yourself under pressure to become some ideal version of who you should be. It means becoming honest. It means sitting still long enough to hear what your inner voice has been trying to say. It means noticing the things you've been pushing down because you thought they made you weak. It means giving yourself permission to stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. There's nothing heroic about ignoring yourself. There's no virtue in suppressing your feelings, your exhaustion, your confusion, just to appear like you have it all together. What takes real strength is presence, the ability to be with your own experience, whatever that may be, without running from it, numbing it, or performing through it. That's where growth starts. But we live in a culture that doesn't reward presence. It rewards output. It rewards momentum. It rewards looking successful, whether you feel grounded or not. So we develop this habit of over-functioning. We become emotionally unavailable, even to ourselves. We silence our own needs because we're too busy meeting everyone else's. We keep going until we can't anymore. And when that moment comes, when the breakdown hits, when the burnout gets too loud, when the internal fog becomes too thick, it's tempting to look for quick fixes, to change jobs, to end relationships, to start over in some visible, dramatic way. But real transformation doesn't begin on the outside. It starts in the quiet. It starts when you choose to face what you've avoided. It starts when you stop running from your story and begin to listen to what it's been teaching you all along. That's what fixing yourself really means. It means showing up for yourself the way you try to show up for others. It means creating space in your life to breathe, reflect, and reconnect. It means replacing judgment with curiosity. And instead of asking, what's wrong with me, you start asking, what have I been carrying that I haven't named? You start asking, where did I lose myself in the chase? You start realizing that the version of you who is hurting doesn't need to be fixed. He or she needs to be seen. When you become present with yourself, something powerful happens. You stop seeking validation from people who don't even know the real you. You stop chasing goals that were never yours to begin with. You begin to notice what actually brings you peace, what actually nourishes you, what actually matters. And from that place, your decisions change. Your relationships deepen. Your leadership evolves. You begin to lead not from fear or image or obligation, but from alignment. People don't need perfect leaders. They need present ones. They need people who are clear enough to say, I don't have all the answers, and grounded enough to keep showing up anyway. They need people who have done the inner work, who can sit with tension without needing to fix it immediately, who can hold space for discomfort without panicking, who can listen not just to words, but to what's unspoken. That kind of presence is rare, but it's also learnable. It begins with intention. It begins with deciding that your inner life deserves as much attention as your outer one. That your emotional health is not an afterthought. It's the root system that holds everything else up. It's deciding that vulnerability is not a liability, but a leadership skill. And that your humanity is not a distraction from your mission, it is your mission. So fixing yourself becomes less about changing who you are and more about returning to who you've always been. Underneath the armor, beneath the roles, beyond the noise. It's a process of remembering your values, your voice, your vision. And it's a practice, not a one-time revelation, not a dramatic overhaul, a daily practice of checking in with yourself, of being honest when something feels off, of making choices that protect your peace, even when it's inconvenient. This kind of presence doesn't just benefit you, it shapes every room you walk into, because presence is contagious. When people see someone who is calm in the chaos, who listens deeply, who speaks with integrity, they start to mirror that energy. They feel safer, more open, more honest. You give them permission to slow down too, to be human too. That's the impact of someone who's chosen to fix themselves, not in a shallow performative way, but in the quiet, committed way. They bring clarity where there was confusion. They bring compassion where there was judgment. They bring stability where there was noise. And they do it not because they're perfect, but because they're present. So if you're in a season of uncertainty or pain or just of fatigue, know this, you don't need to have all the answers right now. But you do need to turn inward. You do need to create space for yourself to be, not just to do. Because everything else, every goal, every relationship, every opportunity depends on the quality of your presence. And presence starts with you. Fixing yourself isn't a detour from life. It is life. It's the work beneath the work. And everything else, every demand, every deadline, every expectation can wait. Because none of it matters if you lose yourself in the process. Fix yourself first. Not someday, not when things slow down, now. There's an idea we've absorbed quietly and over time that being busy means being valuable. We treat busyness like a badge of honor. We say things like, I've just been slammed, or I'm drowning in work, with a strange mix of pride and exhaustion. It's as if our worth is measured in how overwhelmed we are, as if slowing down is a sign we're falling behind. But if you pause long enough to ask yourself, why am I really doing all of this? You might discover something surprising. We often stay busy to avoid ourselves. It's easier to be in motion than to be still. Stillness requires us to feel. Stillness reveals what we've buried. It confronts us with the reality of our own thoughts, our own fears, our own unmet needs. So we choose distraction instead. We fill our calendars, say yes to things we don't actually care about, scroll endlessly, work longer hours, stay in relationships that drain us, all because the silence feels uncomfortable. But here's the truth we often resist. You cannot heal in chaos. You cannot become who you are meant to be while constantly outrunning your own reflection. You cannot access wisdom while drowning in noise. Growth isn't just about adding more, it's about clearing space. Space to think, space to feel, space to ask yourself the questions you've been too busy to face. The human spirit is not built to thrive in perpetual motion. We are not machines. We are not productivity systems. We are meaning makers. And meaning requires pause. Meaning requires reflection. It requires the ability to step back, to breathe, to observe what's working and what's not. But we can't do that when we're always rushing to the next thing. We can't do that when we believe our value lies solely in what we produce. It's easy to confuse momentum with purpose. To think that just because things are moving, they must be moving in the right direction. But you can be running fast and running away from yourself at the same time. You can be achieving things that look impressive on paper and still feel hollow inside. Because without inner alignment, outer movement feels meaningless. You hit the goal but feel no joy. You meet expectations but feel disconnected. You win the game, but it doesn't feel like a win at all. This is why stillness matters. Stillness is not laziness. It is not giving up. It is not weakness. Stillness is where insight lives. It's where clarity comes from. It's where you remember what really matters and why you started in the first place. It's where you get to reconnect with your core, not the version of you shaped by obligation or performance, but the version of you that is rooted in values, intention, and integrity. When you choose to slow down, something incredible happens. You begin to notice the patterns. You start to see the places where your life feels out of sync. You realize which relationships drain you, which habits no longer serve you, which goals are no longer yours. You also start to feel more, yes, that can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Because you cannot heal what you refuse to feel, and you cannot become whole by ignoring the parts of you that are hurting. Stillness also reveals the truth about control. So much of our busyness is rooted in fear. Fear that if we stop, everything will fall apart. Fear that if we rest, we'll be seen as less committed. Fear that if we're not constantly achieving, we'll lose relevance, connection, value. But control is an illusion. And the need for constant control is a sign of internal unrest. When you find peace within yourself, you don't need to control everything around you. You can trust. You can delegate. You can breathe. And in that breath, you find a different kind of power. The power of presence. Presence isn't loud. It doesn't shout. And it doesn't need to dominate a room. Presence is calm, grounded, deeply attentive. It's the kind of energy that makes people feel safe just by being around you. And presence only comes from people who have done the inner work, who have faced their fears, who have processed their pain, who have learned to sit with silence and not flinch. That is what creates true leadership. Not charisma, not control, but calm. If you want to lead others, serve others, inspire others, you have to be willing to slow down and lead yourself first. To be honest with yourself about where you're headed, and whether that direction still aligns with who you are. To be willing to walk away from paths that once made sense but no longer do. To understand that clarity doesn't come through hustle, it comes through stillness. This doesn't mean you stop striving. It doesn't mean you abandon ambition. It means you stop striving from fear, from ego, from insecurity, and start moving from purpose. You move slower, yes, but every step has intention. Every yes is wholehearted. Every no is confident. And that kind of movement is what creates momentum that lasts. In a world that moves fast, slowing down is a radical act. It's a decision to value depth over speed. It's a commitment to substance over noise. It's a choice to protect your energy, your mind, your heart. And that choice doesn't just change your own life, it impacts everyone around you. Because when people see you choosing presence over performance, they're reminded that they can do the same. You give them permission to be human too, to rest too, to listen to themselves.